bars and tunnels, views and valleys, waves and big streets you from, son. Planet Earth, and ain't scared of no Mars attack. What type of bars is that? Stay off my jack. I'm out they corny riot garments, top 5, dying on them. Super fly, snicker, top rope, eagle diving on them. You why you lying, homie? You won't play with my emotions, smoky. Big chief, heart rate, big beat, B-E-Y-I-C, straight jacket, come clean, big said it was a dream, now it's a living thing, with you and living kings, I mean it, I mean it, I mean it, I mean it, y'all seen in the R-A-B, I mean it, I mean it, original son of a pun, some of the I mean it, I mean it, I mean it. It come clean, y'all see it, and the R.A.P. Original ain't shining with the money solid with you ain't living. Whether you're woman or whether you're man, sometimes you got to take a stand. Just because you think you can, you got to run, you got to run. Whether you're woman or whether you're man, sometimes you got to take a stand. Just because you think you can, you got to run, you got to run. Crying against the odds, you're in a trance. Say, who do you think you have a chance? You're a no one from a place where everyone knows your face, come and go, waiting on the sun. So you better hang on and hey, you better run. Cause here's your chance and your race is begun. Down in a hole, you feel like two different people in your soul. Feel like a loser until you see that as you bend, you learn to be your own best friend. You learn how and you learn to take a chance on the spirit of the wind. Sometimes you got to take a stand. Just because you think you can, you got to run, you got to run. Hey, hey, we've been down. We've been so broken, been so low that I kiss the ground. But you can see yourself a winner beyond the money and the greed. Beyond the pride, there's a pure, untested need. There could be a champion in his moral and his speed. His power and freedom in the spirit of the wind.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started shortly. Just going to give a few minutes and then we'll get started.
Whether you're woman or whether you're man, sometimes you got to take a stand. and beat against the drums. It's a beautiful song.
Hey everyone, I think we'll get started. Thank you so much, Earl, for the musical interlude. I'm going to just take over sharing.
Reggie!
All right, I'm going to take over sharing and then we'll get started. Can somebody let me know when you can see the presentation?
Yes, we can see walking towards.
Perfect. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We are so pleased to have you with us today for our important guest speakers, Angela and Nora Boyer, who will be talking through their speech around Walking Two Worlds. Before we get started, there are some important sort of housekeeping things that we'll have to go through just to give you guys some information, and I will pass it over to Priya to walk us through those.
Thank you, Shireen. There are two ways to engage in today's event. You can use the chat feature to ask questions or raise your hand if you would prefer to comment verbally when questions are being taken. Note that these features may not be available or visible if using a mobile device. Also a reminder that this presentation is being recorded and will be available following the event. Now I'll pass it on to Reggie.
We would like to begin acknowledging the land on which God in the province operates in the region of Peel. As part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, for thousands of years, Indigenous peoples inhabited and cared for this land. In particular, we acknowledge the territory of the Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Ojibwe Chippewa peoples. The land is home to the Métis, and most recently the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, or the record of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work in this land. By doing so, give our respect to its first inhabitants. Hello, everyone. It's an honor for me to introduce one of our special guests today, Angela Boyer. Angela is of mixed ancestry from Mississauga First Nation number 8, ancestor of Cuenca, Ecuador. Member of the Wolf Clan. Wearing many hats, Angela is a community builder within the GTA and is a team lead for the Mississauga and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, Trans, and Two-Spirited Project. Angela has been mentored by many community elders and knowledge keepers. She is also a poet and advocate of Indigenous arts and culture. Welcome, Angela. I'll now pass.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Shireen, and I'm going to introduce our other guest speaker, Nora. Nora is Nora Jane Boyer. Her spirit name, I'm not going to try to say it, but it is Spring Water Spirit Woman. I will give Nora that opportunity to let you know her spirit name. She arises from the Eagle and Condor clans, but her roots stem from the Indigenous Ojibwe peoples of Mississauga First Nation in Canada and the Canary peoples of Ecuador in South America. She's the proud mother of her daughter Jessica and her son Giancarlo, who provides such a great purpose, unconditional love, and light to inspire her. She's an employee of the federal government for almost 2 decades. Prior to that, she was an employee of other government agencies and nonprofit sections with a primary focus on the Indigenous community engagement and supporting all populations of youth. She also volunteers for as the Ontario Regional Representative. So I will pass it over now, and I'll give the floor to our esteemed guest speakers, Angela and Nora Boyer.
Aho Chimigwech, thank you so much, Shireen and Reginald, for acknowledging the land and introducing myself and my older sibling, Nora. I will begin with my introduction and I will let her, so bojo, minogijup, hello and good morning. It's been an honor to be able to come forward and speak with everybody. I may not see you all, but I just want to acknowledge all my brothers and sisters of Mother Earth that sit on this line with us today. Majim Kanskwa Dejnakaz, Mississauga Donjaba, Mayangan Indodem. My spirit name is Turtle Shell Woman, and I am of the Wolf Clan. My spirit name has been given to me, and spirit names for us tell us our responsibility here on this earth. Because in our teachings, we weren't brought to this earth without purpose. And I'm of the Wolf Clan, which tells me my responsibility to my community, which is economic development. I will pass the floor over to Nora for her to open up as well. Miigwech.
Ani, Sikwen Nibi Manitou Kwe. My spirit name is Springwater Spirit Woman, and I honor that name to take care of the waters. And my clan is Eagle and Condor. So those are the leads who sort of guide a lot of things through. And I'm here today and I'm honored to sit with all of you, even if it be via virtual. We're excited to work together as sisters because we have diverse experience. We've both been involved with the nonprofit communities, as well as now I'm in the government. So I've really been exposed to a lot, and we're open to, sharing and moving forward together. Thank you. Chimigwech.
Awesome, thank you. So before we begin, I wanted to open us up in a really good way. I wanted to start us off with a smudge. And I'm not sure if you know what smudge is, but we all have sacred medicines to all of our lands. And that's where I just want us to take a moment to pause, to sit with yourself, and to think about who you are and where you come from. That is always in anything that we do is to know who we are and where we come from, and acknowledging our ancestors and those lands that we originally come from, even though we may be sitting on these lands presently. So I'm going to go through the smudge in case you've never smudged before and why we do smudge. So we're smudging today with the sage, which is the woman's medicine. We have 4 medicines. Tobacco being our prayer medicine. I have laid that out this morning. Just, to thank Creator for waking a new day, waking up to a new day, having new opportunity to be able to be present with all of yous. We have the cedar as well. We have sweetgrass and we have sage. So just as we wake up every day to take care of our physical self, our exterior physical self, we wash up because we want to be clean. We want to physically present well to whoever sees us from the outside. And so with this smoke that you see, it's the same thing for our spirit. We are people. Everything around us is energy. When we go places, we journey out, we go to places. Sometimes we feel drained when we go into places. Energy speaks sometimes louder than words. So, when you're feeling heavy or you want to start your day off in a good way, we smudge. Just like you wake up in the morning, you wash your hands, you put your hands underneath that water, and you pull some smudge smoke to your mouth. So you speak good words to yourself and to others. You put your hands again, you pull smoke to your eyes. So you see good things within yourself and with others. You get some more and you put it over your head so you have good thoughts. You pull it to your heart so you love unconditionally. Your ears so you hear good things. And if you really want to and you really understand your energies, you know that we hold them a lot in our shoulders and in our feet. So that is a place where you can pull that smudge to clear that energy and whatever it is that you're carrying. So that is the smudge ceremony. We do that a lot in any engagement that we do, and usually we do sit in circles, which will be our next topic. But before we move on, I wanted to talk about land acknowledgement and what land acknowledgement means. There is no right and wrong. There isn't, because life is about learning. And sometimes we're told to do it. But the land acknowledgement is acknowledging for me, because I sat in other engagements where we had participants ask, well, how do I teach this? Or what does this mean? Or how do I teach my children? And again, this is a perspective of my sister and I, in our lived experience, being Indigenous, coming to an urban setting, because I think we might all agree. I don't know all of you sitting here, but I'm sure that we've all came to this lands that we sit on for opportunity from our original home and our original roots, which sometimes gives us a disconnect sometimes with our spirit. So that land acknowledgement for me is, in order to understand it, it's for you, it's always reflecting back on yourself to know who you are and where you come from. Because if you don't know these things about yourself, how are you going to be able to acknowledge someone else's land? Because you're not going to see the teachings or the respect between it. But when you understand who you are, who your ancestors are, the stories of your family bloodlines, then you'll be able to sit with the histories that we sit in Canada to understand that we do have similarities, a lot of similarities actually, right? So that land acknowledgement is all about understanding yourself, understanding your roots to be able to speak to the land that you're on. And it would be vice versa if I went to someone else's land. It would be out of respect for me to know whose lands I'm on, what the histories are there. You know, there's always going to be politics, unfortunately, but land acknowledgement always comes from within. It's with good mind, good heart, and good intention. So the next thing that I'm going to speak on is the circle. And everything that we do as Indigenous, a lot of the times you're going to see that we sit in a lot of circles. We dance in circles. You go to a powwow, we dance in around clockwise, right? The Anishinaabe people, they go clockwise when they dance. When they enter space, they go clockwise if there is a circle. The Six Nation people, they go counterclockwise. And that's just the way it is. And so I have this medicine wheel. And the circle means many, many, many things, which we won't fully go into just because that will take a lot of time. But to know that I'm always here to direct you or guide you to other resources or connections that you need to learn more about the Indigenous people of Canada. And so this medicine wheel, when we do sharing circles, it's because when we sit in this circle together, we all fall into one of these categories. These colors all represent our brotherhood or our sisterhood. This circle represents Mother Earth. This also represents how we sit. When we sit in a circle, we sit together to speak openly. Sometimes we use tools, sacred items such as a talking feather. Sometimes we use talking sticks. Sometimes we use the grandfather rocks. It depends what is sacred to you, and you don't need to be Indigenous to be able to have a sharing circle. Because I truly believe we are all Indigenous to some part of Mother Earth. We all are sacred beings. We were all given sacred tools to help us along our journey. So we might carry feathers. The other nations and brothers and sisters are going to carry something else that means so much to them, to their teachings. You use that, right? And so we always start in the east, the eastern doorway. This is where that sun rises in the morning. This is where the babies, they say, this is where the baby is born, birth happens, childhood. This is also the element of fire. This is where our tobacco, our prayer medicine sits, And this is also our mental health, our mental self. This is also the season of spring. And as we continue to go to the red, we go to the south. This is where our sweetgrass sit. This is the season of summer. This is our physical health.
Thanks. Sorry.
We're good? Okay, awesome. And this is also our physical health. This is our youth and adolescence. Because in life, we go through our stages, the baby, the child, the youth. And I say that this is probably the most important, especially if there's those youth workers that are on the line right now. This is where we have the most impact. Because again, they're going through their life, they go into adolescence where their emotions that they're unaware of, they're looking for a place to belong. They're trying to find their identity, who they are. Sometimes they weren't given the gift to have the home that others do, right? So that's where that mentorship comes in, those natural gifts that we were given. To remember that when we entered here as baby, we were pure and innocent and full of love. And as we continue on to the black, this is our water. This is our emotional health. This is adulthood, where we start to build our families perhaps, start traveling, reaching goals, and then we continue on to the white. And the white is the north. And this is where our elders sit. Our grandmothers, our grandfathers, those ones that live such a beautiful, long life, the ones that we need to call back to come share their stories, because they're the ones who carry stories and seeing real life and see the changes that have occurred from where they sit now to where we're going. This is our spiritual health. And so when we sit in this circle to talk, it's usually that sacred item that's passed around. And each person has a time to speak. And only the person that carries that sacred item is the one to speak at that time. Because that circle, when you enter in it, it's about respect. It's about listening. And I think sometimes in our society and sometimes in life, we get so caught up that we don't listen as much as we should. And one of our teachings that has been passed down is that Creator, or whoever you call your God, gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. 2 ears because we have to listen twice as much than we speak. And so as we move forward, we were given this beautiful sacred item that you see on the dancers, that you see with the elders, the knowledge sharers, carriers. This is an eagle feather from Alberta. And in our culture, these items are given to you when people recognize the work that you do. They see that you're walking in purpose, but this feather is much more than just a feather. The little ones will usually begin with the turkey feathers because they need to learn the responsibility and the sacredness of the feathers. And so this eagle feather, if you take a look, we're going to talk about the journey of a feather. Because life for all of us is not easy, right? Because we sit here and we're in a time which we call the awakening. And that awakening means, especially with COVID coming, We had to sit with ourselves. Because sometimes in life we get busy, you know, especially when we don't want to deal with things. We get so busy because we don't want to deal with it. We don't want to sit with ourselves. We don't want to sit with sometimes our own mind, because sometimes emotions and things want to be, they come up, but then we push them down, or we get so busy putting our energies elsewhere. So this feather is our journey. When we come here as a baby, this eagle feather at the end is very thick, and you see that it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And that is, they say, we enter here where the eagle feather is nice and thick and at its fullest. And as we start walking from baby, child, and we continue on our journey, this was the original path for each of us that we know and acknowledge that sometimes we get lost. We fall off of our path. We us. So it's with this eagle feather that allows us reflection on our journey. It allows us to see where we're going, what we want. This feather also, when you look at it, makes you think of your life. Who's made impact in it? Who is that person that stepped up when you needed them the most? Who is that one that saw things in you when others didn't? We have to acknowledge those ones, those grandmothers, those grandfathers. That doesn't only mean blood. Sometimes as frontline workers, we become those mentors, those people that impact people's lives, just because we're usually sitting in that position for a reason. And that's because of our own story and hardships that we went through in our life. We go into these helping fields because we want to help others so that they don't have to. It's not that we want to save the world. Some people want to. That is up to you. But sometimes, you know, we want to make things better than what we had. And we were all given gifts when we were born to this world as a baby. When we were born into this world as a baby, how did we tell our parents that we wanted something? We cried. Oh, she's hungry. There was a certain kind of cry they carried. And they would tell us what they wanted. And then we started to grow up. And then we were told to shh, be quiet, don't talk, think this way, study like this, sit like this, right? We were then told how to be, how to think, how to see the world. But I think sometimes we have to always go back to that baby when we came here, just pure love. You know, in order to see our brothers and sisters in that way, we're not always going to agree with one another, but you know, it's our stories of our own journeys that we must share with one another, and the gifts. And that gift can be gift sharing, because when you share your gift, you're empowering one another. You, with your gift, you also carry resources, you also carry abundance. So these things are meant to be shared, because for our teachings, none of this is ours to keep. We come on this physical realm to share our gifts, to walk this journey. But then when we leave, when it's time for us to leave, what does that look like? When you leave, like when you reflect back, when it's time to go, you know, did you share your gifts? Did you walk with purpose? We don't take none of these material things, these technology. And that's what I'm going to go into next is the prophecy that we sit in, because all of our people in the different nations, in the different parts of the world, have an original way, original teachings. And the prophecies are happening with many of them, but I only can speak to what we've been taught. And when COVID began last year, there was a lot of fear because it was unknown. What is this? It's something new. It's a disease. It's spreading. Things were getting shut down. We've never experienced anything like this. But right today we can say we're living through it. We've made it. But then I sat on it when I stayed home from work. And it came to me and I smiled and I said, it's happening. The awakening is happening. Because many years ago, the prophecy of the seventh fire said humanity would all individually, each of us, would hit a fork in the road of our journey. And we would have to choose, each of us, the way we want to see the world, the way we want to experience the world. And that road to choose when you were walking and the road started to split was greed, materialism, and technology? Or were you going to start to go to your spirituality, go inward to find out what was naturally given to you, your gifts, your stories of your family, the DNA and blood that was in you? We have so many generations within us. And that was the choice at that seventh fire. And so when I sat at home when COVID began and that message and that came to me, I was like, it's happening. The awakening is happening. Like a little girl, I was excited, you know, because something's got to give in this world. It's much more than that. We're in a place where climate change is here. We're in a place where people are asking who they are. People sit in places of helping others, but now they're asking, how do we help them, especially with what's going on with the findings at the residential schools. And as sad and heavy that is for our community, we must push forward, and that is together. We must share our gifts that were naturally given to us. We must step into our voices knowing that our ancestors stand behind us 100% in what we do, as long as it's from a good mind and a good heart. You know, we won't be able to please everyone, but the eighth fire, I went to Grandma and I asked her, Grandma, you know, I went around to a bunch of healers because, you know, I get curious. I'm like a little girl. We all have a little inner child in us. You know, we want to learn. We want to see what's going on. So I went to Grandma and I said, you know, I've been asking many people about the eighth fire and when it's going to be lit. I said, and, you know, I even had a dream. She says, my girl, and she's kind of chuckling at me. And she said, it's been lit. People are waking up. People are seeing the truth. That veil of truth is being pulled back. Because if we go back and look at the decades before us, technology is very rapid right now and it's growing very fast. And the messages that we couldn't get across back in the day can get across the world pretty fast. So our communication is opening. We are seeing a lot of things, such as the residential school. And so with that eighth fire, when she says it's lit, it makes me very happy because to be able to sit with all of you today and to acknowledge all of you today, you are here for a reason. I always believe everything's with purpose. And that eighth fire means that all brothers and sisters of Mother Earth will collectively stand together. You know, we sit in silos based on our skin color, on our age, on our genders, all of these things. We put ourselves, the governments put ourselves in those boxes. You know, they put us, they wanted that way, unfortunately. But it's time to put those down. Those were not originally our teachings. Even all of you that sit here, those are not our way of being. Our way of being is love. The way you see yourself is usually what you're going to see in others. And so that eighth fire is the unity. You know, you need your other brothers and sisters. You know, we need our red brothers. We need the yellow. We need all these nations, but we need to use our voice to stand up, because we know, you know, that a collective voice is more powerful than us in our silos. We also know that us sitting together, sharing our gifts, whether that's you loving to cook or someone who is the knowledge carrier for those other nations, we need to sit together. We need to talk. We need to understand one another, not about our differences, because the world has taught us to see each other for differences. We have to see each other for our similarities, and I guarantee you, we have much more similarities than differences. And I learned that when I did the Culture Share program with the Tamil seniors, which was the most rewarding experience I can say that I've had. And it's through Culture Share that we can understand each other as brother and sisters of Mother Earth. So right now I'm going to ask if all of us can take a moment in silence. We smudged, we had some of the basic teachings. And I will say, my offering to you is to know that, yes, me and my sister, we are here, but this work is not always about money. Yes, we need to survive, like all of yous, and why we work. And sometimes we, you know, people work in places they don't want to because we're in survival mode. When you get into survival mode, it's not a good feeling sometimes. But to know that this is my life, my community, and when I say my community, that's not only Indigenous, that's all people. I am Turtle Shell Woman. I have the responsibility of the unity of brothers and sisters of Mother Earth. And just as my grandmothers and grandfathers before me, they sacrificed themselves for me, and I will do the same for my people. So you ever need anything, they will be giving you a resource at the end, and you can email. You need a contact, you need a connection, you want to, you know, send me an email. I will do my best to guide you to the right people, to the right places. But right now, before we go into opening up the floor for Nora, I would like us to take a moment in silence to acknowledge the findings that we continue to find. Yesterday in Saskatchewan, we found more bodies, and this is only the beginning of what we are going to find. And you know, as heavy as it is, it's a grieving process that our community will go through. And as yous, as our brothers and sisters, yous can reach out for support to the Indigenous organizations, to share space. Like, we have to start building, because our truths are going to sometimes hit triggers within you. And it's not nice, and it doesn't feel good. So we will take a moment of silence to acknowledge our ancestors that are being found and that are going to be acknowledged, and will have the proper burials that they've deserved from many, many generations ago. Oh, miigwech. So I'll pass the floor over to Nora. Chimigwech, everybody, for holding space for us, being with us today. We are family. I don't know yous, but I truly believe that. And it's time for us to start stepping up, to work with one another, to uphold one another, to sit with one another, and to move forward in a good way, because the work that yous do is the work that I do, is where we're trying to make impacts. We want to heal, but we have to heal ourselves first. It always begins with us. Go ahead, Nora.
Thank you, Angela. That was very heartfelt and very knowledge sharing. As we were with that moment of silence, it was like my heart was beating. And I was telling my sister a story yesterday about sitting outside of our backyard with our kids playing and just imagining someone coming to grab them and take them away from us. And I couldn't, it was just like both of us were sort of like in tears, because it can relate to so many people on different levels, this, taking away of your children and things like that. So my portion will be discussing the changes through Indigenous history. And I think, a lot of people are asking, oh, when did this all start about these children being taken? When did all these different government decisions? And I will not go through a timeline, because I feel that if I had done it, it would be like for hours. And I'd rather just stick to primarily the residential school and the 60 scoop. I know that John A. Macdonald, he was the first prime minister, and he felt the need to absolve the government of any kind of legal or financial obligations to the Indigenous resources in their lands. So they initiated this institution, which is called the residential school. The purpose of it was for children to be taken from their homes so they become civilized. That's what they say. But in fact, it was taken, and as natives have expressed as survivors, saying that it was basically to take the Indian out of the Indian. Back then we were recognized as Indian, as now it's Indigenous, Aboriginal, so. I worked at INAC, and when this Truth and Reconciliation came, we were sort of allowed to go to an open session where survivors spoke. And, we understand that this happened from 1870 until 1966 was the residential period. So that was 126 years. And when we were told as well that there was approximately 139 residential schools across Canada that schooled 150,000 children, Indigenous children, that is on record. I know that there's been reports too that have never been displayed with findings that after 5 years of the residential school, they also had a report from their health minister who had went in there and saw the conditions and said over 30% of the children have deceased. And there was concerns, but that was shut down. Nobody ever brought that up because they wanted to continue. There was also concerns from the government that when they put the children in the institutions, they wanted to teach them primarily English, religion, and they wanted them to be farmers, to know farming, agricultural teaching. The children started to learn a lot. They progressed like children do. And it was very, very hard because you go from your homeland, your home, immediate home, where you don't speak any other language than Ojibwe, Cree. There's all these various languages, and these children didn't know one word of English. So it was sort of like tormented and like they went through a lot of hardships. But then they learned the English. They started to learn that way, which was not something they were wanting, but they had to do. And I think the understanding too is that a lot of the children were taken from their home. It was really terrible. But as the years went by, it was sort of the families who wanted to save their children from going, and they tried to fight, they would be jailed, or they would remove them from those lands, from those indigenous lands, and put them astray somewhere else so that they couldn't be in the perimeters to try and get their children. So there's all of these factors that are playing at the beginning of all of this happening. And when those children started to learn, they started to progress, but there was concerns from the government saying they're getting too smart. They're learning too much academic stuff. They're learning to speak. We don't want them to compete with us. So they said, okay, we'll stick to the fundamentals, the religion, and the farming, because they're going to be farmers. We want them to agriculture. We want to take care of lands. That's what they're going to do. They were in there from, I think it was the age of 4 to 16, and some of them stayed a little longer. But when they went through all of their hardships, because I know that if you're interested in finding other, like you wanted to understand it, you could always go on YouTube. There's a lot of books out there from their experiences, and it's really hard to take. So that was one thing. And then when they were done school, we were advised that they were given their little suitcase with their clothes. They were sent back to their communities, and they didn't know where they fit. A lot of things with the parents and the families who had their children taken, or their relatives, had a sense of guilt and remorse, because some of them knew what was going on, and some of them just were like, just turn a blind eye because they couldn't deal with it. They couldn't fathom what their children were going through, or what was happening, or what was being done. So then they turned to substance abuse. They lost sight of who they were. And then those children who went back in those communities were lost as well. They didn't know, we look like, but we don't speak the same language. I don't eat that food. I don't know what this is. And it was very hard. So a lot of the children who decided to go academically, or they went away, they were searching and they just couldn't find where they belonged. And so a lot of things happened. And in addition to residential schools, there was the 60 scoop, the 1960 scoop. It was from 1950s to 1980s, where Indigenous children were put into a foster care and they were adopted by white people. That's what they quote on the books. And they were sort of taken care. I can't say all of them were mistreated in the institution and in the scoop, but I know that I'd say about 10 to 15% were all right, but the other percentage were just shattered and to pieces trying to find themselves. So with that, the scoop ended in 1980s, but the residential school didn't end until 1996. And through all of the cracks, a lot of people lost who they were, their culture, their teaching, their understanding, even their connection with their lands. And I think the thing is with us today, we come from diverse lands, we come from diverse cultures, but like Angela said, we're all human beings. We all share a lot of heart, thought, compassion toward each other. And I think that's true. We've been put in the silos because everyone I've ever known has had a form of discrimination or has been through some trauma. And when you hear somebody else suffering, you want to run to help them and you want to reach out. But it's true, we have to help ourselves. It's really important. You know, with all of this, if you wanted to read, like the Truth and Reconciliation report is a large report. And I know that there's all of these call to action. It's like the Indian Act. When the Indian Act was implemented back in the 1800s, they said that they were going to provide all of these great things. It doesn't exist today. You don't see healthy homes. You don't see healthy overall health, economics, just their water itself. So that's hard for Indigenous people to trust easily, because even though they're walking on a path to try and find themselves and reconnect, it's oftentimes that they feel like, okay, that government, that the institution of church, I really can't be bothered, and they sort of go isolate themselves again, and they go into suppress things, and then they become a different way of life for them. But fortunately, I have to say, with Angela's teachings, it's very positive to hear someone, you know, in her age who's reaching out, teaching her daughters our culture and our traditions, and even teaching me. I'm not as cultural as her, but I learned the other government elements because I work in the government, and that was my purpose, to find out why did they do what they do for our people? Why can't we do it for ourselves? So I feel that, you know, there's a lot of, we have diversity of people, we have diversity in perspective, we have to start inclusion, the power of our voices, and the organizational culture with the equity and results from policy, practice, and position. I think it's really important that you're here today because you're open-minded, you're open-hearted, open spirit. And there's a lot of things we can do as organizations or individuals. You can listen, which you're doing today. You can take away some of the things that Angela and I are sharing with you. And if you have a question about something, you can ask the questions. Angela and I are here to guide you and support you. But there's other avenues too. There's paths, there's people who will teach you, a person from their own experience too. Because that's how a lot of this experience came to me, was through those teachings of others. And I'll tell you, when I started in the Indigenous community, we were raised on a reservation, but I came into Toronto, 19 years old, and I went to the Native Center, and my mentor who hired me was Indian. She was a 62-year-old woman who was like Indian, not Indian native, but Indian from India. She took me under her branch, and she knew more about my culture than I did. She linked me to the elders. She linked me to the teachings, and she put me on my path, and I have a direction now. So it doesn't take a person from your own culture or ethnicity. It's a person who has a heart and a good mind and has doors that are open to resources. And that's what we got to do with each other, help each other. Because I find that that's where we're going to move forward. That's like actions speak louder than words. And it's true. That's always been Angela and my passion, is to work for the betterment of all people. And I think now I'll do a closing. If there's any questions for Angela or myself, you know, please feel free to ask.
And if I may say, I wanted to say, because we put it as walking two worlds, and you know, you might wonder, well, what does that mean? You know, it was we're an oral. That's why we didn't do a presentation, because my teachings is, we have always, and I think many of the cultures, when you go back, we were people of oral teachings. That's how we passed our knowledge. That's how we taught our kids. That's just how we did it. And walking two worlds, Grandma Pauline Shirt, you know, she told us, my girl, don't get lost in this world. She's like, we are walking two worlds. And I always thought about it. She's like, you have to keep one foot with your original teachings, your original ways of your ancestors, bringing back the language, bringing back the culture. But she says, then you also have to have your other foot in the other world to give you that balance. Because if you go too much into the Western world, you can get lost by that technology, by that greed, by the materialism. But she's like, but this stuff's never going to be enough, because you're going to keep chasing it and you don't take none of it when you leave. She's like, but when you focus on your spirituality, your original teachings of your family lineage, when you heal yourself, you heal your bloodline. And they say, from what I've been taught, is that it only takes one person to sacrifice themselves for their whole family unit to make a difference. And I believe that is true. You know, you when that person stepped forward to say, no, these cycles stop here, that's a very powerful thing that happens, because your family also starts to heal and has to, I mean, either they show themselves out the door, or they love you so much that they have to change things within themselves too. So that is what that walking of two worlds is, because I'm sure all of us walk two worlds, you know, from our original teachings of our family, and then coming to this country, Canada, Toronto, that is so fast, right? It's just so fast. Everything's so expensive. The house, you know, you're going to pay that forever. but it's just finding the balance in between and what is truly important to you. But yeah, I know we don't have all the time, but we're open for questions. So if anybody
I
has
think
any
you have
questions.
a question in the comments, Angela and Nora. One of the questions, it says, what are your top recommendations or first steps for non-Indigenous folks who want to be an ally? And that's from Rain.
For me to become an ally, it depends on what you want to do. It depends the capacity, right? But it's getting to know it. There is a lot of mistrust, and I will be honest, when it comes to community, because usually a lot of the times our community sometimes feels like, what's their agenda? What do they want from us? Some people, and it's true though, because some people sometimes want to partner with us for kind of like tokenism. Yeah, we worked with the Indigenous. Yeah, we got the funding, right? So again, it's about that intent. It's about learning about the medicines. It's about learning these little things that when you go to them, you go to that agency, that person, that elder. You know, the Indigenous Network, I'm going to let you know right now, has all of our healers, seers, medicine men. Go there. That's the first step. Go start learning. Go talk to Grandma Renee. Go talk to Wendy Hill. Go talk to Troy Green. Go talk to them. That's the first step. Grandma will teach you. We're very open people. Grandma, you know, there's something I don't know. All of my other brothers and sisters that are doing this work they will guide you, but they're all in different capacities of what they can bring. So it's just, it depends what you want to do. But first, I think it's educating yourself, knowing who you are so that when you step forward to say, I want to work with you, or let's build together, you're coming because you've done your work too. You understand the sacredness of that medicine. If you want to talk to someone, you want to get to know someone, learn the medicines, go offer up your tobacco. Even if they don't accept it, go put it out by a tree. That prayer will still be brought up to our ancestors above us, right? But in regards to allyship and connection, if you have something in mind, reach out to me and maybe we can connect you to the right place. It might be you have a gift. What is your gift, right? We're all gifted. We come here. Some people are really good at technology. Some people are good at certain things. So it's empowerment, sharing your gift, empowering those younger generations. And I think we all agree that our younger generations need it right now.
Thank you. I have another question here from Moon. She says, I noticed you use the word Indigenous. Just wondering if you identify as Indigenous. I attended a session with an Ojibwe woman last week who said that Indigenous is a colonial term and that they preferred FNMI, First Nations, Métis, Inuit. I just want to make sure that I'm using the correct terms.
Sure. Well, Nora can hop on this one as well, but for myself, again, and I think use in your cultures as well. I'm very open because if I start getting like this, we were called Aboriginal, we were called Indigenous, First Nations, Métis, Inuit.
Indian.
But yes, I identify. We call it Indigenous because that's what has been changed. That doesn't define us. I always go by our natural teachings of there's no right and wrong. I have to live by that. You know, even if someone is racist, negative, we have to sometimes we react, but we have to think, where does this come from? What is their story? What has caused them to become cold, right? Every teacher, and I will just give you this heads up, when it comes to teachings, you will see many teachers in life. But if you start to see Indigenous too, you know that you will take what you need and you will leave what you don't. That's just life. You might cross paths with me. You're going to take something away today, but you're not going to take it all away because you don't need it. but you're going to need to only take away what you need. So when you go and learn from people and speakers, they're all going to speak in different capacities based on their life experience and their life journey. And I will admit, some are more hard-headed. That's just truth. That's just being a human. That's called our ego. So yeah, Nora, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, no. I've worked like in nonprofit, and we were like known as Indians. And when I worked at Indian and Northern Affairs Canada, I know that there's the Indian Act, and a lot of people were like, we're no longer the Indians. And I know through government changes, they had changed it from Indian to Aboriginal to Indigenous to First Nations. So for me personally, I don't feel offended. Like Angela said, I'm very open-minded because there's been different teachings along the ways to different people who understand, well, I was here, I immigrated, or I was born when it was the Indian Act and they were Indians. Oh, no, Aboriginal affair. Oh, it's Aboriginal. Like for me, I know who I am. So if they come at me with different titles, so be it. But I think that's the thing. It all depends on who you meet on your path. Because I've talked to, I'll give you an example. I was talking to a chief of a community, and I asked him, what do you refer to as a council? Do you rather be called a tribe, a band, a nation? Oh, well, we're not tribes, very offensive. And I said, why? That's what we were used to be called, tribes, because we were allotted and we're together. And no. Now we're a nation. I only want to be referred to as a nation. So it's true. Some people take in a different context, but Angela and I are very open-minded and we have our teachings. So when somebody goes, oh, you're Indian, right? I'm like, Indian, like from India or from Canada? Like I asked them and they said, no, Indian from Canada. Yeah, I was born here and that's my heritage. I said, and I explain things because sometimes people don't understand it. I never get offended, but it's always good to ask that question, because people are different. And I'm glad, you see, that's an open mind when somebody's asking that kind of question, because people do get offended and you're going to get people who are. But Angela and I are very open to it. Our children understand it as well. And yeah, thanks. It was a great question.
Nishad has his hand up, so we'll take two more if we can. Angela and Nora.
Yeah, we can take a few more. Yeah, go ahead.
So Nishad, go ahead.
Thank you very much for opening my eyes. I'm new in Canada, right? I just came to your land, and still, as a human being, we all are struggling. So my question is, how we can support more clients who are from indigenous community, because we don't understand their culture, right? We go by book, whatever we have in the book for mental health, we go with it, because I found it is hard to engage them. So how we can build trust with them so we can support more or we can learn more. Thank you.
For me as a frontline worker, there's many things. It depends on your capacity of your organization. First of all, I think cultural sensitivity training is a must. In order to understand clientele, you need to understand the basics of their culture first. Secondly is learning the medicines, because eventually if that organization learns the medicines and then takes on that responsibility, that when that client comes in and you honor them and their spirit in that way, to offer them, would you like a smudge before we begin your intake, or before we begin this workshop? It's just it's a respect, right? It just like if I went to the church, they burn their incense. If I go to someone else's another God's home, they burn something else. It's a respect. Sharing circles are the best way, but again, it comes to trust. So it's building a relationship at the beginning, to bring an Indigenous facilitator in to build that bridge, because that's what we have to do, is build those bridges again, because a lot of them have been torn down. Again, everything is trust. Unfortunately, everything is trust. And medicines, and then going to learn yourselves as workers. I encouraged like staff development for that to be part of your work, for you to go book yourself a one-on-one with one of the elders, knowledge keepers, or create a day. It doesn't only have to be Indigenous focused. Make it a multicultural day where all teachings are shared from all nations, right? So then it doesn't look like it's just focused on Indigenous. All brothers and sisters are being honored in this day through these teachings, so we can better get to know one another. Sharing circles for me, for yous as workers, I think is the best thing to do. Why? Because you can be like, we're going to have a sharing circle today. It depends. You can have, there's a sharing circle. It's about creating a sacred space, but it's about the content that you're going to discuss though, right? Is it going to be something like really like simple, or are we actually going to go into high emotion? Because then you need all your mental health supports and everybody else there as well, right? So it depends how far you want to go with that sharing circle, or just to even friendship sharing circle. Let's get the clients to know one another. Let's meet each other. Who are you? Bring some art involved, to get them aligned. Who are you? Where do you come from? And that's sometimes a very hard question. I can say that because of displacement. A lot of our younger ones are still in the system, right? Nora, how about you?
Well, I guess I could use an example as like, not only like, I know it's research and information, that's really key, but it's the interaction too. I'll use an example. I used to be a coordinator for youth, homeless and street involved youth, and the program was ran around crime prevention. So they wanted to foster a relationship between the police, the firefighters, and the youth. There was no way the youth were wanting to indulge in that. They were like, no way, right? But then I got them out of an element where I started doing volleyball or basketball. And those guys would come out of uniform and they would play with the youth. And the youth started to forge a relationship with them, getting to know them, getting comfortable with them. And then they started to say, hey, we're going to start a program. Do you have any ideas? And so it was sort of like, not formally done, but it was sort of that engagement, and they forged those healthy relationships. And that was really important for me to do. It didn't happen overnight, but it did happen. So things like that are just as important as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jamie Ann had a question very similar around this, how SHIP can support the Indigenous community in our daily work life and as an organization. So I think you've provided some answers for that. I just want to say now, though, that if people do have questions after we've had some time to process, taking them away, Angela and Nora have kindly offered that you can send your questions to me, and I will be able to send them to Angela and Nora on your behalf, and they will send us back responses that I will be able to share with everybody. So that opportunity is there. If after we finish today and you go off and you think about this and you process and have some questions, or just want to have an opportunity to talk, I'll also put up just now, I'm going to share the resource list that Angela provided, which is awesome and amazing.
Would you be so kind to put up the tree, please?
Oh, yes, I will find that too. Give me
Okay.
1 sec. So let me go back to the PowerPoint slide.
So she's going to put up a resource list that I compiled. There's many organizations, but these are like the bigger ones. If you want to have an Indigenous experience out at Crawford Lake, they're actually going to have Indigenous cuisine. They have the Indigenous garden set up, so that everything is there. But these are more of the bigger organizations. The Indigenous Network is there. My information is there. But like employment and training is that's a partnership you're going to want to create, right? Because Mizabik Employment and Training helps the GTA. So yous are in the GTA, that can help your client, part of your assessment and goal planning for work, right? You can get trainee positions. There's lots of opportunity. Go check out their website. You can get summer students, like there's lots of opportunity. The Native Canadian Center is one of our oldest, but all the contacts there for use. And so you can reach out to whoever you need. And if you need any clarification, just ask.
They
so
are
yes,
also, oh, sorry, they're, so I will also be sending out the resource list to everyone when we send out the recording as well, or the link to the recording. We'll make sure that all staff get that resource list, so you'll have it along with Angela's email there. I don't know, Angela may regret that, because from all the engagement that I've seen in the chat, you may be getting lots of emails, Angela.
well, you know what though, um, it's important for me. It really is. I mean, I may not respond right away, but I will be in touch, and this is how we have to begin. This is how, you know, there's certain ones that need to step forward to take the lead of that unity. And I'm sorry, but it is my responsibility. That is the name I carry. And that is the work I will do until my last breath on this earth. So, you know, and if you're willing to do it with me, multicultural is the way to go. So we leave nobody behind. Everybody is in our circle. Everybody has a place in our circle. Everybody's voice matters. And we see each other from heart to heart.
I'm just gonna stop sharing because I want to find the lovely tree that I'm not sure your daughter's name, Angela, if you want to let people know your daughter's name.
So we're big in the arts. Well, she is. But whenever I go to speak, we like to create. And that was like, we like to give gifts. But we also know that partnerships and community is very important. So last night she created, and the tree of life is so important. I think it has significance to everybody. And so she created the tree of life, but she wanted to show that, well, you will see when it comes up.
I'm trying to find it. Hold on, give me 1 sec. Let me see if I can share it here. I think I found it. But of course, you know, my computer is now taking an immense amount of time.
No worries. Well, I'll explain. Okay, I'll explain to you. So she chose the color purple because it's for spirituality and healing, as the, you know, and you see all the partner organizations to ship, because all of yous are that tree of life. You are that breath of fresh air to those clients. You know, my sister said those roots are like your foundation. That is also the client's foundation when they begin. We have to sit right there. That's kind of like trauma-informed care, where that client's at that tree trunk at the bottom. We have to think about what was their story? Where did they come from? What are they carrying? And then as they move up that tree trunk, then all of yous are all connected above. How do you resource out? How do you send them to that organization? How do you work in collaboration? What does resources look like? How are you set up to be working with one another? So that's where this art piece comes in, to show that we are all connected, and that that client taking that journey has choice, as you see in those tree limbs. So this art piece has been gifted to ship. My daughter is 12 years old, and I will encourage her in her little art, and we have a love for trees, so we wanted to share that with you.
Thank you so much. It's beautiful. So I'm going to now just close everything off and thank you guys so much, both of you, for sharing with us your time and for giving us this opportunity to learn about your culture, to learn about Indigenous people, to learn about all of the things, you know, and for sharing so heartfelt. I know in our conversations, Angela and Nora, I've had a wonderful time speaking with you, got carried away a couple of times, and I'm sure we could go on forever. Hopefully we'll be able to invite you guys back again at some point to see some of the work that, you know, I'm hopeful that our SHIP community will continue to do now that we have some resources. And so we thank you so much. And then I will just turn it over to Reggie to provide an ending for us today.
All right. Thank you again, Angela and Nora, for your insightful and powerful perspective. I know I've personally learned a lot, and many of us will take this knowledge with us and as we continue our allyship journeys. Thank you all who have joined our event today. If you have any questions or feedback, Please reach out to edi@shipshay.ca or on our team's page, Breaking Barriers, Building Bridges. So thanks again, Angela and Nora. I really appreciate it. You guys were great.
Chimigwech. Enjoy the journey, everybody. Make it count. We only have one life to live. Bamampi, that is in our language. Till we meet again. We never say goodbye. We say till we meet again because we're always connected to one another, and there's never goodbye because even when we leave this physical realm, we connect up in the spiritual realm. So, Nora, if you'd like to say any closing words.
Yeah, I again say thank you so much for this platform. We appreciate it. The questions also were really insightful. It's just beautiful to know that organizations are willing to open up to individuals like ourselves to share some knowledge, and we're always, available. Angela's given her resources, and Shireen has mine. So, we look forward to working with all of you in the future and putting you on a good path. Chimigwech and Bamapi.
Thank you so much, everybody. Take care and have a wonderful rest of your day.
See you, Shireen. I'll see you later.
I think the recording just needs to be stopped at some point.
I have stopped it.
Thank you so much.
I'm just waiting for it to pop up in the chat. I think it takes a few minutes.